What was the creepiest thing that ever happened to you when you were at home? XGF walked suddenly out of my bedroom down the hall, opened the closet by the door, grabbed a pair of her shoes from the back, said, "I've been looking for these," and left. This was 4 months after I'd broken up with her. Still not sure how she got into my bedroom, but I changed all the locks and got a security system after that. A woman who spends 4 months looking for a single pair of shoes can accomplish anything. I was maybe 10 years old and my mum had nipped out to the shops to get a few bits, so I was home alone. My uncle lived next door and we lived on a private road, so it was all very safe. I was watching TV in the lounge when I hear this large thud from the room above. I remember it being a loud thud, as we had this large chandelier that would shake and jingle if someone above ran across the floor, for example. So I'm 10 years old, looking up at this chandelier that's gently swaying from something upstairs, and I just nope out of the house, terrified. I locked the front door and sat outside until my mother got back. She just assured me something had probably fallen over, so we both went upstairs to check, and there was nothing out of place. All the windows were closed and all doors were locked aside from the front door, and I'd have heard someone come through there as it was next to the lounge. There are a few more unexplained stories from that house, like plugs being removed from sockets behind units no one had moved, doors randomly opening on their own and things randomly going missing to reappear again later, but overall it was a nice house to grow up in. Looking back, I'm sure there is an explanation, but it's definitely creepy. Rats, those things are ducking huge and silent when they don't want to be found. End of the semester, my junior year in college, I lived in a 3-story townhome, where the first story was just a carport and you'd take stairs around the back to get to the front door. Anyway, by this time in the year most of the students had left the college town except for the ones that had finals on the last day of finals, for example me and my roommate. So we had been studying till about 3 in the morning and we both ended up knocking out on these couches we had on the main floor by the front door. At around 4:30 am I think I heard my roommate get up and lock the door. That woke me up, and in a half asleep state I asked him, "Why are you locking the door?" He responded that someone just opened the door and closed it. I was too tired to care and attributed it to him sleepwalking and laid my head back down and closed my eyes. Not 30 seconds later, I hear the front door start to rattle and see the knob turning. I looked at my roommate and we both stayed silent and still. I grabbed a knife I had on the coffee table and just waited frozen still. Eventually it stopped after what felt like 30 minutes, but was probably 30 seconds, and we heard a truck start and drive away. When we woke up the next day we saw cop cars outside, and apparently like 7 out of the 10 houses in my community had been broken into and robbed. Wow, I'm glad he heard that. That's scary though. Woke up in the middle of the night by the sound of happy children laughing in the living room. We didn't have any children. I somehow managed to find the strength to get out of bed and step out into the dark living room. I have read way too many horror books and is very afraid of the dark, so I still don't know how I managed. I peeked into the dark room ready to face whatever ghost children that was lurking in there. Turned out that one of our cats had stepped on the remote and started the TV. I was house sitting in my parents' basement by myself a few years back watching Monday Night Football. There was a storm outside, but nothing crazy. All of a sudden, the power goes out and I hear water gushing in their storeroom. I run in with nothing but my phone flashlight, and there's a small waterfall flowing out of the wall around a pipe. I grab a nearby 55-gallon storage tub, thankfully empty, and put it under the flow. When it's about half full, the power kicks back on and the water stops. I dump the water out in their sump pump it, waiting for it to happen again. It hasn't happened once in the 4 years since. They even had their foundation inspected, and it came back as all good. Pretty sure they don't believe that it actually happened. I wonder myself occasionally, to be honest. One night, while hanging out in our living room, my husband asked me if I heard that. Heard what? I asked. He just kind of shrugged, then shook his head and went on doing what he was doing. He has better hearing than me, so I shrugged. As well, he often perceives things that I don't, or picks up on sounds that get under his skin when they don't even register for me. It wasn't unusual. but then he got up and peered outside. He was flustered. He asked me if I was playing something on my computer on low or something that had laughing in it, but I wasn't playing anything with audio. He then asked me if I heard laughing. Nope, I heard nothing like that at all. My answer bothered him. He said that he could hear laughing coming from outside, that it sounded demonic, but kind of like how Bowser laughs when you lose a level in Mario. I definitely didn't hear anything of the sort. That only seemed to agitate him more. He paced by the windows a bit but eventually gave it up and went back to piddling on his tablet only to suddenly get up and go outside to investigate. At first I thought he was being goofy and just messing with me, but that's not really how he jokes around with me, and he was noticeably frustrated. He's not the sort of person who gets worked up. Seeing him like that was odd. Eventually, though, he calmed down and we went to bed. The next night he heard the laugh again. This time it really bothered him. He kept walking the perimeter of the house and went outside every time he thought he heard the laughter, but as soon as he passed through the door the sound stopped. I still didn't hear it. This happened for several nights in a row. It started eating at him. Enough so that he considered looking around for a therapist because he was afraid he might be suffering from a mental health crisis. His family has a history of schizophrenia. I was so worried about him. Nothing could be done to soothe him. He stayed up later and later, unable to sleep because of the laugh and not knowing its source. He became really withdrawn, stuck inside his head. It was so scary seeing him like that. Then, a couple nights later, when I went outside to bring the trash can to the road, I heard it. That creepy Bowser laugh. It echoed down the street, bouncing off the few houses on it. It felt like it filled the air with that deep, strange undulation. It scared the absolute duck out of me. I ran inside to get my husband, but it had stopped by the time we scrambled out the door again. We listened for the longest time, standing out in the dark in absolute silence. I was so freaked out, but I wanted to know what the duck was going on. I refused to go back inside until we heard it again, together, and could confirm that it was something we both perceived at the same time. It felt like an eternity of standing at the edge of the road when the laughter started again. It was louder and longer than before. We determined that it was coming from down the road. D. Grabbed a flashlight and a baseball bat, then we headed in that direction. It's worth noting, now that we lived in the sticks at the time, the road was a short country road that ended in a cul-de-sac that was the turnabout for a farm. In fact, the whole street had once been part of that farm's property, but the owners had sold bits and pieces of land off over the years, so that there were about half a dozen houses situated on the access road, each of which sat on their own 3 to 20 acres. Most everyone had some sort of livestock, so we were used to the sounds of donkeys, goats, cows, and even peacocks. We knew what fox screams sounded like, and were familiar with the cries of coyotes. Yet, we had never heard anything like this laugh before. So with that in mind, there we were, walking down a dark road in the middle of BFE trying to figure what the duck was going on, and what was producing that laugh. We were halfway between our house and the end of the road, when we again heard that awful, possessed, crazed laugh. That deep, guttural scary ducking laugh. It came from our right from the direction of a paddock with a pond that was home to a bunch of ducks, one of which did a great Bowser impression. Edit for the record. I know duck quacks don't actually echo like I described, but man, it certainly seemed like it did. About a year ago, I was heading up to bed from my computer at about 2 AM or so. I went up the stairs and into the bathroom. The bathroom in the upstairs had a small window in it. Between the toilet and shower, I'll provide a drawing soon as I can. The way the bathroom was laid out, when you walked in you would see out the window. So I walked in, and I saw something. It was very tall and skinny, and it was on the roof of the neighbors across the yard. I froze in fear, then it turned its head 180 degrees like an owl, and looked towards my house. I ran out, and went straight to bed. As I was trying to sleep I heard a tapping on my window. It stopped soon after, then I heard a loud bang. After I woke up the next morning, I saw a big stone by the fence. It likely caused the bang. I still have no explanation as to what it was, and what caused the tapping. As a child I grew up in a mid-rise in Amsterdam. They're kind of old houses with really bad insulation, built in the 1930s or so. Above us lived alone a guy with severe schizophrenia, and thanks to the cardboard walls and floors, we could hear him to talk to himself and sometimes shout or scream. One day he decided to have something against my parents and openly plotted to murder my dad with himself, and we could hear everything. We called the police and my dad had a confrontation with the guy on the stairwell connecting our homes. Fortunately nothing happened, and the guy was arrested and spent a year in a clinic where he got treated for his psychosis. But yeah, hearing all that as a little kid was frightening and confusing. I felt like I was being watched when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old living on the farm. It was really dark out though, so it was nearly impossible to get a good look outside. Turns out the foster kid of our nearest neighbor was a pervy and somewhat violent teenager who would creep over on foot and stalk my sister. I don't know for sure if he was looking in on us that night, but we found out later that this is something he did other times. He moved away sometime after that because he sexually assaulted someone at his school. I don't know what happened to him after that. I was asleep on my side and I felt a hand move up my arm and my friend whisper in my ear. I immediately woke up because I was home alone. Checked the whole house and was in fact still alone. It felt so real, and I even called my friend to ask them if they had been at my house and they were in another state on vacation. This still actually happens to me fairly regularly, whether I'm with other people or not. It doesn't freak me out as much anymore, but it does always wake me up very quickly. I'm fairly confident it's related to hallucinations associated with high pain. I hallucinate when I'm normally awake with high pain as well. Posted this before. My 4-year-old son had a habit of announcing when he had to use the bathroom. He would say, "I gotta go potty." One time he makes his business known and heads off toward the bathroom. He returns seconds later and says there's already someone in the bathroom. Now I do know for a fact that it's just the two of us home, so the hair stands up on my neck. I ask him, "What do you mean?" He repeats, "There's already someone in the bathroom." Now I'm thinking, is it someone I see dead people or someone in a hockey goalie mask? So I grab the biggest knife from my knife block and tell him to stay here. I walk to the bathroom, take a wide angle to see in. Nobody. Slowly and quietly walk toward the shower and pull back the curtain. Nothing. By now my son has walked around the corner and I ask him, "Where did you see the person?" He points to a new unflushed toilet and says, "See, someone's already here." His big brother didn't flush the toilet. I was asleep in bed with my wife. At around 2 AM we both heard a girl's voice say "hey" with a happy cheerful lilt. We both sat upright thinking my then 12 or 13-year-old daughter had come in. Nope. I got up and walked the house and nobody was downstairs. Everyone was asleep. Again. My wife heard the same thing. When I was about 13, someone broke into the house while I was home alone. But we only found out after my brother came home and went into his room, which had a window onto a screened-in porch. Window was open. A bunch of stuff was taken. I didn't hear anything, and our dog Excitable Sheltie, who barked at everything, didn't bark at all. There was a weird sort of otherworldly buzzing scratching sound coming from my bedroom wall. It started in the middle of the night when I was asleep, and it seemed to be moving around inside the wall. I obviously freaked the duck out and went to get my dad. I was 19, but not ready to deal with wall monsters yet. Anyway, there was a daddy longlegs that had somehow got itself stuck behind my big Franz Ferdinand poster and was fluttering frantically between the paper and the wall to try and get out. The apartment I currently live with shared a wall with an 85-year-old man. He was astoundingly strange. He was either fetal alcohol or inbred, not trying to be rude. I loved this man, and in his later years he was in need of a lot of help. I had to call ambulances for him probably 6 or 7 times. I brought his groceries in for him and his garbage out for him. Because he was such an odd guy, he didn't have any friends and I don't think he had any living family. He became really fond of me and my girlfriend and would often knock on the door to have a conversation with us. He sometimes would hide in our dark stairwell, and when we would come out he would say boo and scare the shit out of us. Not the creepy part. One day I had to call an ambulance for him and he never came back. We called the hospitals and all of his social workers, since we normally acted as his phone call proxy, and I was his emergency contact. I received no notice of his passing. Nobody would tell me anything, and there sadly was no funeral service for him. My girlfriend and I were really upset when we found out, and stated that we wished we could have said goodbye, or could have been there for a funeral service. I have not told my girlfriend about this, because I don't know how she would take it. I personally try to avoid and disregard mysticism, and I'm usually a big skeptic about ghosts or spirits. When I'm alone in the living room in the mornings waiting for my girlfriend to wake up, I normally sit quietly and look at stuff on my phone, or listen to music on headphones. Since his passing, when I'm sitting in the living room, often get that feeling like someone is standing over my shoulder. In these cases, looking at what is on my phone screen. When this happens, there is a smell that is identical to the old man smell that my neighbor had. If I turn around to investigate, the smell and the feeling go away. If I zone out at my phone again, it often returns. Creepy is how I would describe the first few experiences. But just yesterday morning it happened a few times inside of an hour, and I just thought to myself, Jerry, stop being so weird. While his apartment was being gutted and thrown into a garbage container, I let myself in one day and took a photo of him that I hope to have framed one day. Such a nice man. Super odd, but painfully nice. I miss him. It happened when I was 8 years old. I was home alone waiting for my piano tutor. I heard someone opening the front door, so I ran to the entrance saying teach. Then, whoever it was slammed the door shut and ran out of my home. I immediately locked every locks on the door and trembled till my actual piano tutor arrived at my house for a lesson. This happened the other night. It's 3 AM and my girlfriend and I just got in bed, and I fall asleep. Suddenly, I realize I hear something weird coming from under the bed. As I come to it, the scratching ticking noise repeats. It's close to pitch black. I think, what the heck is the cat doing? Then it happens again, and I realize it's not the cat, but probably a mouse. We had a mouse in the living room last month. Then it happens again. It's not a mouse, and it's coming from under my girlfriend's side of the bed. She has her back towards me and is dead asleep. It happens again, and I was scared at this point. I'm a 23-year-old dude, and I thought it was a monster. It sounded like the clicking monster sounds from movies. I slowly turn and lift my head up. I think about waking my girlfriend up, but I know she'll freak out. The sound happens again. I can hear rustling and then the clicking noises, and it sounds like it's coming from inside the wall now. I slowly sit up, putting my arm on my girlfriend's shoulder. She turns her head quick as ever. That's when I see the light from her phone. She's watching DIY TikToks, the same one repeatedly. I haven't been shaken in my boots scared in years, but that scared the shit out of me. It must have been a mix of factors. I was baked, and I think I only dozed off for a few seconds before being woken up by the noise. Thinking about the fear I had in my chest and neck, I can still feel it. It kinda makes you feel alive when you are feeling that strong comes over you. I was chillin' in my bedroom with my window open. It's on the ground floor, street facing. Someone comes up to my window, sees me there, and asks about house numbers that are clearly displayed on the houses. I answered, waited for him to walk away, then shut and locked my window. I was having an issue earlier this year where someone would come stand on my porch and not ring the bell. I only noticed because we got some snow, and every single day there were fresh boot prints leading up to my door. And I know it wasn't the mailman delivery guy, because this happened in the morning and I only ever get mail deliveries in the late afternoon evening. After 3 days of that I called and got a security system installed. I can't help but wonder if the two situations are related. Either way, I haven't opened my window since, and you bet your ass I keep my alarm armed and an eye on my cameras.